rendering tools.
Hi everybody. In this video we're going to demonstrate how you can use the new rendering tools in version 14 to produce photorealistic drawings. Included in this presentation, I'm going to provide the sample files used to create this such that you can recreate it yourself. For example, let's go ahead and show the folder that I'm going to provide and explain what's in it. So the folder is going to have 6 files. It's going to show example images of what you can create with this tutorial. This is an example where we're showing the camera towards the window. We're also going to change the camera in the HDRI to point towards the wall. We're going to provide a start file from which you can do the same steps that I'm doing in this video, or you can just pick up the final file. And lastly, one of the steps that we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to create an animation, and the animation that it creates looks like this. And so we'll provide you steps for all of the above in this video. Okay, let's go ahead and launch ViaCAD. We're going to use ViaCAD 14. We're going to use build 1639. You're going to have to use 1639 to do this tutorial. These steps are also applicable to not only to ViaCAD but to TurboCAD Mac and SharkCAD. Okay, let's go ahead and set up the user interface for this training tutorial by going over to the tools and selecting the Concept Explorer. I'm going to use the Concept Explorer to turn on and off some cameras. I'm also going to go into the title bar and right click and have it collapse to the top. This allows it to use less of my drawing area with a large dialog box. Next we'll go over to the tools and we're going to turn on our photo render settings palette. And this has our settings. It has display last image, render to file, render to just render the existing viewport, render a camera, and we're going to use this several times to select a camera and then create a camera. Alright, now we're going to call in our glass on platter start. And let's render this up using all the default settings. We're basically, this is using the pen colors that have been assigned to the model without any materials, textures, or lighting set up. So we'll put it in a view orientation and then just click render camera. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to pull out our render settings, and the render settings dialog box actually does more than just your default settings. It also provides a user interface to set up your materials and your textures, your HDRI, and your background. Let's begin by setting the material associated with these 3 glasses on the table. I'm going to select them, and then I'm going to go to materials, and in this case the glass. We're going to select the glass shader, and we're going to use all the default values where it is using a white clear texture, and hit apply. Alright, next we're going to switch views, and I'm going to change the material of this platter. The platter has some sharp edges on it, so I'm going to select it and go to change resolution, and let's make it super fine, and you can see that it gets much smoother. And now I'm going to go ahead and apply a material. In this case, I'm going to apply a metal, and we'll use palladium. And again, hit apply. Okay, and then one more setting. We're going to use a wood texture on the table. I'm going to select my table, go to the textures, and from the folders I'm going to pick wood, and I'm going to scroll to pick a wood. And I like this one. This is the wood 16.ptx. I'm going to select it and just hit apply. Okay, now I'm going to change my setting to 10 here so I get faster updates, and I'll just hit update the screen. And so now we can see we have our metal on the platter, our glasses, and our texture on the table set up. Next, what we're going to do is add a HDRI. So the HDRI is going to provide us a 360 degree lighting environment, as well as pixels definitions outside of the materials and objects that we're using. and by default we're using the default HDRI, and I'm going to pick Studio 0016.exr, and I'll apply that. And I'm going to turn off my background. I do not want this to be my background pixels. I'm going to turn that off and hit apply. And now let's hit render. And we can see the lighting effects associated with the HDRI. Now, because I'm using orthographic projection, we're not going to see the HDRI background pixels. And so what we're going to do is we're going to activate a camera. And I have a camera already made called window camera that I'm going to turn on, use my layer manager. And the sharp cone point is where the eye point is, and it's looking at a reference point. And now I'm going to go to the render camera. I'll select my camera and tell it to render. And now you can see the background pixels are filled up with my HDRI image. Now, because your HDRI is actually applied to a 360-degree sphere, I always like to have a very high definition HDRI. In this case, I'm using an 8K, that's 8K by 8K image map for the background. All right, and then one more thing. You can see in this image there's pixelization going on. These pixels are white. These are called fireflies, and this is related to the type of rendering that we're using, a PBR rendering technique that samples based on changes in the image. And those areas that are not changing are going to be white. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn on a post effect, and we're going to use a denoiser. And we're going to hit apply. And let's go ahead and do the same thing again and watch the difference. Now, the denoiser, it uses some machine learning techniques that fill in the pixels based on neighboring pixels. It does a really good job. And as it continues to render, it will update those approximate pixels with the actual pixel color. Okay, let's do one more thing. Let's show a different camera in operation. So right now our camera is pointing out through a window. I'm going to go over to my layer manager, and I'm going to turn on a camera that points to the wall. And I'm going to turn off my other camera. And you can see this is now a camera going from left to right in this view. And we'll pick our camera and tell it to render this perspective. And this time you can see with this eye point, reference point, we're now looking in the same HDRI, but this reference is going to look into the wall. Okay, now let me mention a really nice tool, the Render to File tool. The Render to File tool allows you to pick multiple cameras or just render the existing view orientation. All right, the Render to File tool allows you to render the existing view orientation to a file, or you can select one or more cameras, and then when you do your render to file, it'll say, hey, we're rendering cameras, just to give you a heads up, and then you specify your width and height. Now, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to actually just show you some examples of files I did earlier. So here's an example where it rendered the wall, and then here's an example where it rendered to the window. Okay, now I'd like to show you one more thing, and that is the ability to do animations. And I'm going to go back to the Concept Explorer, and this time I'm going to turn off the wall camera, and I'm going to turn on an animation path. And my animation path is simply a circle that goes around the model with a point at the center of it, where the circle defines the eye point as a function of time, and then the point is the eye point. The point is where the eye point is looking at, called the reference point. And so to do this, we're going to go to the Tools, Animation, and we're going to pick the Flyby tool, and we will select the circle as the path, and we're going to pick this point as the reference point. Now you can specify different height width relationships. And you can also then specify your field of view. I'm going to specify 40 degrees for my field of view, and for my frames I'm going to pick 240. Now this is going to use your render halt settings. So let's say I set it at 60 seconds and I want a 4-second video. That would be 240 frames at 60 seconds. It could be probably 5 hours to generate this. So this is something you may typically want to do before you go to bed or at the end of the day. Now let's go ahead and show an example of a movie that's been rendered with about 5 hours of render time, and you can see how that 360 HDRI is working. Let's have it just play, and you can see the example of an animation. Okay, that's all I have to show you regarding this tutorial. I hope it helps you out with your photo rendering projects. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching.